Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. You're never going to see this. I'm not going to use this take. Do something very normal like, hello and welcome back to an episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. In the 1920s, post-World War I Germany had been cast away to the shadows of the world stage by the Treaty of Versailles. Or as Americans would say, the Treaty of Versailles, because we only use L's if we're going to pronounce them. Anyway, the Treaty of Versailles brokered peace between Germany and the Allied powers after the war. It forced Germany to accept guilt for all the evil crap it had done, pay billions of dollars in reparations, make significant territorial concessions, and restricted their ability to maintain and build up their military, because they really couldn't be trusted to not try and take over/destroy the world again. The economic strangulation that the Germans experienced in the post-war period drove an economics-based nationalism among the populace. Frustrated with their punishment and wanting to truly solidify their status as go-to movie villains, the Germans began to secretly rearm themselves in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. By the time that the rest of the world recognized the new threat that Germany posed, the Nazi Party had already risen to power and at that point couldn't be stopped through diplomatic means. Quick rearmament can be a tricky endeavor for powers that have just recently been defeated and militarily castrated. This is why it's quite a wonder as to how the First Order was able to rise from the ashes of the Galactic Empire in the darkness of the unknown regions. And how they did so is exactly what we are going to examine in today's video. But hey, first please go over and check out our new Instagram page at The Generation Films, where we are fighting the good fight to meme for humanity. It's a whole lot of fun. Anyway, to start, we have to think back to Emperor Palpatine's death at the hands of Darth Vader. Palpatine had prepared a contingency plan in the event of his demise, because you can kill Palpatine the man, but Palpatine the idea will live on. This secret plan directed agents of the Empire to assure the Galactic Empire's collapse and an eventual rebirth. The contingency plan wasn't some last-minute concocted scheme either. It was prepared cautiously and carefully over time. During his reign, Palpatine secretly devoted much time and effort to studying the unknown regions of the galaxy. He had felt a dark side presence emanating from the unknown regions since childhood and became obsessed with tracking the source of the Force down. Now, in the real world, we might call that paranoid schizophrenia. Throw child Palpatine into a mental institution and give him the shots and the pills. But in the world of Star Wars, greatness is allowed to thrive. Anyway, so Palpatine wanted to study the unknown regions, but naval technology at the time was too inadequate to be able to send ships into that part of the galaxy safely. Hyperspace lanes in the unknown regions were constantly shifting, and so accurate, efficient travel to that part of space was exceedingly difficult. However, Palpatine was able to send probes as well as scouts to the region to begin collecting information on it. Though the journey even for droids was not an easy one, as the unknown regions were cut off from the rest of the galaxy by all sorts of natural chaos, from solar storms to rogue magnetospheres to black holes to gravity wells. Most probes that attempted to journey there would most likely have been destroyed along the way. Palpatine was able to monitor the unknown regions to some degree by satellite as well. Of course, he also consulted Grand Admiral Thrawn on the unknown territories, as Thrawn was a Chiss, and the Chiss were a blue-skinned sentient humanoid species native to that part of the galaxy. Nonetheless, the probes and scouts that did make it into that part of space were able to set the foundations of what would eventually become the First Order by seeding planets in the unknown regions with the infrastructure to raise an army. Storehouses, shipyards, and laboratories were erected by the personnel that were able to safely make it to the unknown regions. When the Galactic Empire was finally defeated in the Galactic Civil War, its remaining leaders were forced to sign the Galactic Concordance, which required that the Empire disband and demilitarize. Additionally, New Republic Chancellor Mon Mothma issued a decree declaring all Imperial officers war criminals. This meant that the remnants of the Empire had to go on the run, and right in line with Palpatine's contingency, they retreated to the unknown regions using the information collected over the years by the droids and scouts sent there in order to ease the danger of the journey. That said, the vast majority of the Imperials who attempted the journey disappeared along the way. However, those that did make it to the unknown region safely took control of the infrastructure Palpatine had set up over the years and formed themselves into a militaristic state known as the First Order. Though the full-scale rapid rearmament of the former Imperial forces would not truly begin until one of the First Order's leaders, Snoke, consolidated power and transformed what was a military junta into a military dictatorship with him as supreme leader. I mean, you can't honestly expect that if you get a bunch of Darksiders together, they're gonna respect the rules and each other and the balance of power. With Snoke at the helm, the remilitarization of First Order forces was shifted into high gear, which is what would ultimately lead to the First Order's military becoming the impressive force that it did. But how? How did they do it given the terms of the Galactic Concordance and whilst in the most difficult part of the galaxy to traverse? Well, the first thing Snoke had to do was figure out a way to travel through the unknown region safely. His administration discovered the Attendants, a mute alien species native to the unknown regions that had special navigation abilities. They recruited the Attendants to help lead their ships through hyperspace and to train other beings to become hyperspace navigators. You know, as bad as the First Order might have been, you really have to hand it to them for being decent enough to enslave aliens as space guides in order to make space travel safer for humans. It really was the moral thing to do. Anyway, the Attendants enabled the First Order to manage their empire across the unknown regions, something that the New Republic could not do, and so the First Order rose relatively uninhibited. Not that the New Republic necessarily would have obstructed them if they could have. Sure, the New Republic had replaced the Empire as the dominant force in the galaxy, but like any powerful and wealthy liberal democracy, it found ways to destroy itself. The New Republic had critics from within, many of whom were Imperial apologists who romanticized the days of the Empire and desired a strong central government with a powerful military. These Imperial loyalists often ended up joining the First Order in the unknown regions. However, the First Order was able to recruit some moles in the New Republic who could foment problems in the Republic and direct attention away from the First Order. For instance, Carice Sindian was an agent who worked to collapse the Republic from within on behalf of the First Order. And even beyond all their traitors and defectors, the New Republic just had no taste for stopping the First Order's military buildup. Princess Leia did attempt to sound the alarm bells about the First Order's militarization, but she was laughed out of the Senate, who accused her of warmongering and sleeping with her brother. The New Republic was exhausted by war at this point, and the populace did not have the stomach for more bloodshed. So on all sides, the First Order's mobilization was left ignored, or at least underestimated by the New Republic outside of Leia and her growing band of resistance fighters. Meanwhile, in the unknown regions, the First Order was in full rearmament mode, building up its personnel and arsenals and completely disregarding the terms of the Galactic Concordance. That's not to say that they were completely blatant in ignoring the terms of the Galactic Concordance. Where necessary, they did need to find creative ways to skirt the rules. The Republic had banned weapon sales to the First Order, and so it wouldn't have worked for arms manufacturers Blastech Industries and Mersun Munitions to provide the weapons for an Imperial rearmament. However, being that the New Republic wasn't in the mood for war, and that its citizens weren't exactly exercising their Second Amendment rights to their fullest potential, the two companies desperately needed to find new markets. And in order to skate around the Galactic Concordance, they spun off a subsidiary called the Sohn Blast Corporation, which would manufacture weapons for the First Order in the unknown regions. They were not the only companies to do this either. Sinar Fleet Systems spun off an unknown regions-based subsidiary known as Sinar Jamis Fleet Systems, which produced ships and other vehicles for the First Order, such as TIE fighters and Upsilon-class command shuttles. Loratus Manufacturing, an Aratech repulsor company, spun off the Aratech Loratus Corporation and developed the First Order's Snowspeeder. And of course, Quat Drive Yard spun off Quat and Trella Engineering and built Resurgent-class Star Destroyers for the First Order. And hey, the idea that corporations would find ways around embargoes isn't exactly ridiculous either. About 150 American corporations, including Ford and General Motors, were involved in the rearmament of Germany despite the provisions in the Treaty of Versailles prohibiting such trade. That's why I laugh when these car companies try to guilt me for not driving an electric car. It's like, yeah, I'm warming the atmosphere to some minute degree, but you helped Hitler. I don't really feel like those two cancel out. Anyway, the First Order's shady business dealings weren't limited to corporations either. They were also involved with criminal organizations. The First Order did business with Nikto crime lord Rinrivan D's cartel by using the Amaxines, a humanoid warrior race, as proxies. Through the Amaxines, the First Order supplied funds to Rin D, which were used to fund the rise of his cartel into a major crime syndicate. The cartel expanded their smuggling and gambling operations, generating tons of money, and funneled the profits back to the First Order, which then used the money to build their fleet. Oh, and if you're wondering how the First Order obtained all their resources to build their army, well, they raided and pillaged. They invaded and occupied or just raided planets in the unknown regions, the Outer Rim territories, and even in wild space. Many of these planets weren't uninhabited either, and any species living on a world taken over by the First Order would often be enslaved or conscripted into the First Order military. Part of the First Order rearmament program involved an initiative known as Project Resurrection, which aimed to build up a new army of stormtroopers. The First Order Stormtrooper Corps was formed partly by abducting children from planets they invaded and conscripting them into their army for training. That said, in terms of numbers, the First Order lacked the manpower of the Galactic Empire, and so contrary to Stormtrooper training under the Empire, First Order Stormtroopers were trained to be adaptable and ready to improvise. In terms of combat, their training heavily focused on counterinsurgency operations using guerrilla tactics. By changing the way they trained their soldiers and ultimately the way they fought, the First Order didn't actually need to have the same manpower that the Empire did. So that's how the First Order built up their forces in the most difficult area of the galaxy to traverse, and in the face of a peace treaty that prevented them from pursuing military might. The truth is that the darkness of the unknown regions was the best place to rebuild the remnants of the Galactic Empire into a massive fighting force. Just as Palpatine had prepared for, the very destruction and banishment of the Empire is what led to it rising stronger than ever. And I would argue that we should all look into the unknown regions of our souls to discover our true strength. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Definitely like our Instagram page at The Generation Films. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.